And so we can engineer how our environment is supposed to look like and how we want it to look like. It actually makes things a lot easier for us to do stuff and also accomplish the things that we want to do. And I didn't make a conscious decision to say, I'm going to be that person. I became a product of my environment.
We're going to talk about time management and productivity, which is part of what I was mentioning a second ago. And the guest I have on today, folks, if you are into time management and productivity, you want to be better at it, you want to learn to be better at it, you want to learn some techniques and structured ways to think about time and productivity in business, that's what this call is going to be about today. So I invited Pham to come on and talk about this because as I understand it, he's one of the best in this business. And as I had initial conversations with him, I really enjoyed our time together. And so I'm very honored to have you on the call and chatting with me today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Good. So where are we chiming in from today? Where in the world are you, just so people get an idea?
Yes, I'm based in Austin, Texas. I moved here in 2014, mainly because I wanted to get rid of my car. And I was living in Los Angeles before then, where I had to sit in a car, even though I was working from home for roughly 2 hours a day. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to win back 2 hours per day, because if I lived in a walkable city, I could probably get that back. And having lived all over the world in Eastern Europe and in Asia, where I lived in walkable cities, I knew what that was like, being able to walk everywhere. And so I accidentally discovered Austin, Texas, where I came to visit some friends during South by Southwest and had a great time. And we were walking everywhere.
Walk to Austin? Is that what you...
And I wish I did. I don't think I would have made it.
Okay, isn't living in a car or a van down the river, like, isn't that the cool thing to do nowadays?
Nowadays, yeah, because of the pandemic and everything, but I'm very time efficient. And so I realized if I live in a specific area where everything is within 3 to 4 blocks, then I could win back an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And that's kind of what ended up happening here.
So are you a proponent of the 15-minute cities then? Because that's time and efficiency and location. Is that something you're down with, or is that not something you're cool with?
Yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody, right? I know you're like out far away from the city and you like to have your own space and everything. And for me, being in the city is great because I like to be within 15 minutes of anything. So it's not for everybody.
No, I like my space. A 15-minute drive for me is still in the country, and I love that. I didn't think I would, though, because I lived in a lot of cities. I think we talked about this a little bit in my past, and grew up in a cul-de-sac in a town. So living in the country was not really something I had ever envisioned. But now that I'm here and I've spent almost a decade, I'm like, yeah, okay. I get it.
Yeah, talk to me in 5 years. Maybe I'll change my mind. I'll follow your steps.
Is this the 5-year plan then? What's the 5-year plan then?
No, the 5-year plan is just building this company that I have and continuing to live a great life. And that's what I aim for. And one thing I always like to say is happy people are productive people. So let's optimize for happiness. And that might change of what your life circumstances are, especially when you have kids and everything, which I don't have right now. That will change, I'm sure.
So how do we optimize for happiness?
I think there's a lot of things that people take for granted, and being able to realize all the great things that we have going on, like having a sense of gratitude, I think is an important key to happiness. So, for example, every day when I start my day, I use the 5-minute journal, and you talk about, hey, here's some things that I'm grateful for. Here's some things I want to accomplish today. And just having that a little bit of a centerpiece in your mind to go, hey, I've made it this far. I've accomplished a lot of different things. And especially as we're entrepreneurs and builders, we're always trying to move forward. But we never really sit down and reflect and look back and say, what have I accomplished? What are all the things that I've done already? And what can I be proud of? And I think being reminded of that is really important. And sometimes it takes us to leave the country or to go to a third world country or go to somewhere where we're almost like culture shocked sometimes by what's possible and what's happening in different parts of the world, that we realize like how good we have it. And in fact, we can have that experience and reminder every single morning.
I like the Stuart Smalley approach to things for my daily affirmations, right? I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Do you remember that from an SNL skit?
I did not grow up here, so I don't get that cultural
You don't? Oh,
reference.
sorry. Well, for those of you who are listening, they'll get it. Those are daily affirmations. He always went into like a shame spiral, which backed out of the whole call. It was an SNL skit from the early 2000s or 90s, I think. But anyways, he gives his daily affirmations, and it was supposed to be this big thing. But then by the end of the little segment, he's like shaming himself into a spiral. It kind of became a joke of self-awareness and self-esteem and self-worth to kind of say things into the mirror or pump yourself up like people do and try to build up your self-esteem, pump your chest or whatever it takes. But yeah, you're right. Happiness is a location, not just a location based, but it's a mindset based. I used to be the anywhere but here would make me happy guy for a while. And that's what really worked in my traveling time with IBM, because I was anywhere but there. traveled 2 to 3 cities a week, constantly going. At one point, I just let the apartment go and stuff and just became a road warrior. And on the weekends, I'd fly to different locations and come back. And for a while, I felt pretty sustained in that. I needed to be moving. I needed things to be changing, and just to go to a stagnant place wasn't going to work for me. And what I was searching for ultimately was peace and happiness in that moment. And I was on a constant journey to get to that place of restructuring brain and location, and getting to the place where I was like location agnostic. It's not going to make me happy. I can be happy setting anywhere if I'm happy with myself. And at that point, I was not happy with myself. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. It could be the job, the life, the situation, the family. In my instance, I was through a divorce and I was not happy with life. So therefore, I wasn't happy with anybody, and I wasn't happy with myself. And I woke up one day and I was like 100 pounds overweight. And I'm like, who is this guy? Staring in the mirror. That was not optimized happiness, right? How much do you see of that in your business and model that you deal with on a daily basis?
Most people that I work with, when they first come to me, they are in a very similar state or a very similar position where they're very ambitious people. They have a lot of stuff going on, but there's something missing, whether it's a lack of time, whether it's some sort of vision that they have for themselves, whether it's something that they feel like they have this like negative spiral going on in their lives and they have no way of figuring out how to get out of it. Similar to your story in that sense. And sometimes it takes a catastrophic thing for people to go, oh, wow, like I need to wake up and do something about this. And
yeah,
I think as we get older and a little bit wiser, hopefully as well, we start to realize mortality is a real thing, right? And I believe there's like the statistic or research that on average, anytime we turn 37, 38, we start to realize like, oh, wow, life is actually relatively short. We need to do something about this. And sometimes when we have kids, that kind of speeds that up and we start to realize, hey, there's bigger things going on than what I have going on right now. And that's really important. And you start to realize that time is even more important than anything else in your life, including health for some people. Right. But when we think about time, health, and focus, these are kind of like the main pillars that I teach when it comes to productivity, because if we can maximize all three, we have to have ourselves, or we allow ourselves to be in a place where we're really productive. And so I think of it as like time, energy, and attention. So T framework, as I like to call it. And so anytime I'm working with someone, I'm always thinking about, okay, are they maximizing their time? Are they maximizing their energy? And are they maximizing their attention? If one of the three is missing, then that's the first thing we want to focus on. And most people, it's time at first. And then they realize, okay, I kind of got that figured out. I know how to use a calendar. I know how to manage my time a little bit more. But oftentimes the health or the sleep or the energy piece is what's missing. So I'm sure when you were traveling all the time and flying, you come home from all your trips and then you go, oh my gosh, like if I want to start a side hustle or side business, you're probably way too tired. There's not a lot of energy in the tank. And even though you have the desire and time and the focus to do so, if you're tired and you have no energy, nothing will get done. And so we want to tackle these components.
What I refer to as tired and not inspired, because at that point, you've got to figure out what is your inspiration to change, right? And so, like you said, big catalyst, sometimes big ones are changed. I needed a big one. I got hit in the head with a really large one. And that was where things start to focus in difference. What I've come to do over the years, and I appreciate that, is to recognize time very differently in its effect and how I affect time in my life by changing the way that I think or even structure my speech around it. So now we teach our children the same way. We say, you don't have to do this, you get to do this, right? You get to do it versus have to do it as a reframing of the way you consider things. And so when I optimize time or efficiency of time now, I think about the things I get to do versus the things I have to do. And I reprioritize those in my mind. Do I get to do it? Am I enjoying it? And I stop thinking and saying things like, well, I don't have enough time to do that. What I say is that's not a priority for me right now. So it's an empowerment change of language that becomes a pattern of change in behavior that has to be repeated enough until you actually start to believe it. Because I don't think at the initial onset of when I dealt with those things, I didn't really believe it. I'll be honest. I'm like, I don't really believe this. And I had to keep saying it to myself and then acting on it and saying and acting on it so many times that it now became a known aspect of what I was doing. They say 21 days to a habit, right? Is that kind of your experience too?
I think building a habit can take different lengths of time for different people, especially if it's a daily habit versus a weekly habit, right? So for example, doing your bed every single morning is a daily thing you can do, and that's relatively easy to build over time. But doing something once a week, for example, reviewing your journal or planning your week or something like that, it's easy to slip up one time. And then when the next week comes around, it's easy to go, well, like hey, I skipped it
Here's
last
my
time.
excuse for this week. But I think Jordan Peterson said it best. He's like, if people can organize their bedrooms, they're one step towards organizing the rest of their life. And literally it was down to, if my bedroom's clean and my bed is made every day, that is checking off something that I did successfully today to start my day. It's like a success metric before you get up and go. Do you have any of those kinds of things when you're talking about time as we're unpacking this? Do you have any ideas and thoughts about that?
I'm a big believer of that overall idea. And the way I frame it is the way you start your day sets the tone for the rest of the day. So if you start your day in a productive manner, then you set the tone for the rest of the day to follow that as well, right? So if Neil, if you showed up to the office and you were like a little bit angry, you're a little bit upset, you're a little bit anxious, you're not feeling very inspired, even if you have all the skills, all the tools, all the workflows in place, and you know exactly what you need to do, but if you show up in such a way, you won't be as productive as you could be compared to showing up where you feel inspired, where you feel confident about yourself, you know exactly what needs to be done and how you're going to do it, and you're energetic about it. Then when you add the skills on top of that and the tools and the workflows and everything else, you're going to be so much more effective compared to the person that I described earlier. And so part of being effective and productive is also the way you show up. And like you said, doing your bed in the morning is one way to kick off that momentum, right? Another thing I always encourage people to do is drink at least 16 ounces of water or 500 milliliters for those who are living outside the States. And it's just a way, one, to hydrate your body, but also to signal to your body to wake up. And then there you go.
Into the big old 64-ounce Bubba mug that sits over here that has to be drank a couple times a day.
Yeah, that's a great way to hydrate yourself. And also hydration is so important for performance and cognitive ability. And then also just going outside, getting some sunlight in. Like if you follow Dr. Huberman, he talks about sunlight a lot, how it's so important for resetting your circadian rhythm and waking up and helping you sleep better at night, right? So there's all these little things that we can do. And I teach them in my different programs. And it's such a simple idea, but the more we can do that consistently every single morning, we allow ourselves to be set up for success that day.
One of the things we work on too from the energy side is the grounding, because there's actual energy. Like we can talk about energy of ideas, energy of mind, energy of maybe purpose, but this is physical energy. I don't know if anybody's actually studied or you did any studying on grounding. Not just grounding math, but literally getting in the ground. And one of the things people don't understand, and maybe they can tie this together in your mind, because it finally hit me like a ton of bricks. Why do I feel so good when we go spend a week at the beach? It's because most of my day is spent with my feet in the sand. I'm grounding myself. And I realized that later on as I studied this more, that's why you feel so great after 3, 4, 5 days of staying on the beach. It is not just the idea of life or disconnect, because I know people that take vacations and can't disconnect for the whole week and they come back thinking, well, that was a waste of time. I didn't get to have any. I didn't de-stress. I didn't have any fun. For me, it was, you know what? I recognize I'm grounding. I'm getting energy from the earth. I'm hugging a tree out here in the country. It's like, take your shoes off and go play in the yard and reconnect with the energy of the world. It is there. It's in all things. And if you think this is pseudoscience, go do the research and go look up. You're going to see plenty of proven case studies and scientific back studies that show that the power of grounding to the earth, your physical body, is a re-energizing. Have you done any study on this, Eric?
I don't know too much about it personally, other than anecdotally from myself. Like you were saying, if I go to the beach, for example, and spend a lot of time in the sun, right? That helps a lot. Here in Austin, Texas, where I live, there's a lot of grassy areas. And so people love to go to the park, and there's something about going on a Sunday, going for a walk, taking your pets out, and just going barefoot and just walking, feeling grounded. And as much as I electricity work myself here, there's a medical device here in Austin that was invented called the NewFit device. It's an electrical stimulation device, which a lot of professional athletes use to help with rehab, sports performance, and everything. So you have this electric current going on through your body, which is kind of cool. It helps you perform better. And so as much as I anecdotally have experienced energy and currents through my body, I haven't personally looked into the actual science behind it as much.
It would be worth it taking a look at just from the energy perspective. I mean, there's grounding and pads and sheets and mats you can put in your bed. And then, of course, just literally taking your shoes off and going outside, taking the time to re-energize your life as a protocol. Sun, vitamin D, of course, is huge. There's been a lot of that research done in the last few years about the power of vitamin D and how much we're deficient as a vitamin D, because we don't spend enough time outside anymore, because we're in offices, we're in complex, we're in buildings all the time. We're not actually, quote unquote, getting in the sun as much as we should. But of course, taking vitamin D supplements, I take a 10,000 IU supplement every day of vitamin D3. And I can tell you over time, it makes a huge impact on your mental and physical and mindset, as well as your energy levels. So this is something that I do. And of course, I'm not a medical doctor, but go check it out for yourself and see the power of it. It's there. But the energy of your life and mind, when you start to work the right phrasing, context of phrasing and daily affirmations or startup blocks and stuff, builds a proper energy around you. It resonates with other people at a different frequency, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the whole seasonal affective disorder, SAD, that's something I'm actually very prone to. I remember it was like 6-7 years ago, I went to the Netherlands where I grew up. I was there for most of my life, and it was actually Christmas time. So I remember being cooped up in the house for like 3 days with my parents, and it was snowing outside. There's very little sun. And I started to get all these depressive thoughts, and I was like, what is going on here? I'm generally a pretty upbeat person. I'm a pretty positive guy. I have a positive outlook on everything, but I was starting to get all these negative thoughts through my head, and I couldn't realize it until after I came back. I did a blood test just for like an annual checkup, and I realized my vitamin D levels were really low. And that explained the sort of like bad moods, depressive thoughts that was going on. And as soon as I started upping up my vitamin D supplement and spending more time in the sun, that pretty much went away. And so
isn't that something?
It's really powerful.
I love to hear that, dude. Yeah, no, it's so changing for folks. And I wish they would, if they're listening to this, please take a look at that. It's very powerful. There's a number of studies of mind over matter. And I know we think this might sound a little weird, but you really can change your affect, your person, even your physicalness. The one I saw the other day, and I can't name it exactly, I know it just came out recently, was those who thought positively about themselves versus those who were negative. And this lady took, I think it was 10 senior aged men, 75 and up, out to a week conference. And then what she did was she set it up so it was all like 1952. So all the music and did you see this recently? I have to remember the study off the top of my head. I cannot remember exactly who the person in the study was. I know it's on Google or YouTube if you go check this out real quick. But the study was older men and how would it affect their life and their physicalness and their being and their energy and their mental wellness. And in 1 week in that environment, they completely changed. And it was literally because the music, the genre, the era, the camaraderie, the affect of everything felt like 1952 to them. And literally they de-aged in a week. I mean, they weren't like dancing and climbing the mountains, but noticeable differences in this clinical study of how people were positively affected by that energy. And it was literally like taking them back in a time capsule. I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And it just reminded me again how powerful our mind is in lifting us up and overcoming some of these challenges and our willingness to do them and talk about them the right way. And our ability through depression means watching too much television, watching too much negative media, buying in too much to the fear can literally degrade your person down to an older age, right? Like until like you're 20 years older. And then you start telling everybody you're 20 years older. You start wearing like a badge of honor. I gotta do that. I'm too old to do this. Like, where do you fit in all that? Do you subscribe to any of that? Do you not subscribe to any of that? Do you know the study I'm talking about? I'm going to have to go look this up and throw it in the show notes because I know I just saw this the other day.
I think what I'm a firm believer of that is related to this idea is that I think as humans, we underestimate the power of our environments to what it does to us and how it affects us. So not only is it the people that you hang out with, but the city that you live in, who you surround yourself with. The whole cliche thing of like, you're like the 5 people closest to you kind of, I think there's a lot of power to that. So for example, being here in Austin, Texas, people here are generally very friendly. People are very upbeat. There's a lot of builders. There's a lot of entrepreneurial energy. There's a lot of spirit. There's a lot of people who are generally very positive. And even if you are somebody who's not like that, if you continue to be around that all the time, like when I go up the elevator in my building, everyone just says, hello, how's your day going? What have you been up to? Even if I don't know them whatsoever. You do that enough times, and guess what? I became that person now that goes, hey, how's it going? What have you been up to? How's your day going? Even though I wasn't that person whatsoever, right? And I didn't make a conscious decision to say, I'm going to be that person. I became a product of my environment. And I think we all underestimate the power of that. And so if we can engineer how our environment is supposed to look like and how we want it to look like, it actually makes things a lot easier for us to do stuff and also accomplish the things that we want to do, right? So what is
do I relate? Yeah, I relate so much to that. I mean, I had understood business and its growth would allow me to create the lifestyle that I wanted. So that's what I set out to do, right? And I left IBM, I went out, I'm going to build this business, I'm going to grow it up really big. And if I just work really, really hard and 60 hours a week in my business and blah, 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 then I'll eventually get the lifestyle I want, right? Well, that didn't happen. In fact, I burned out and went the other way and ended up facing a bankruptcy because I got too much involved in the whole nonsense. And if you want to know that backstory, go watch one of my other podcasts that I talk about this. But the end result was I recognized that, okay, this isn't going to work. You literally push yourself to areas that most likely are not for your person and only are for a very small few people who can withstand that. For me, it was the recognition that, okay, what is that lifestyle that I've been trying to get under all this other activity, this mechanics, this go, 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 do activity thing? And it was the recognition of what that lifestyle needed to look like. People are like, well, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, well, my 5-year plan once upon a time was to reach a lifestyle that I actually enjoyed with people that I can spend time around that I enjoy, that's fun environment to be around, or I'm fun to be around because my environment doesn't suck. And that there are multiple versions of profit from that, which people have heard me say before. It's multiple profits in life and energy and connectivity and networking with great folks like you. And from that will come profit of finance out that if I'm intentional that that's a part of what I'm going to do in business. And so I've finally reached a place after 47 years where I now confidently can say I'm living the lifestyle that drives my business now. And I've inverted it. It's taken a long time for me to figure it out because I'm a slow learner. And I have to bump my heads a lot of times into crap and fall over many, many times and stumble before I figure things out. I'm just really stubborn. But the lifestyle driven business for me now, I recognize, and maybe some of you who are listening to this can relate, and maybe even you, Tham, but I had to get my mindset into my lifestyle first so that I could see the outcome and aspect of where the business would eventually fit into that. That make sense?
No, I completely agree. I was actually victim to the opposite side too, where when I started my business, I was like the slave of the business. So the business was the most important thing, and I had to do anything to make the business happy and to keep it going, right? And there was a point where I had a business partner at one point, and he left, and we had this like whole buyout process, and it kind of got ugly, and it wasn't like very amicable at the end, where two parties left happily. And business breakups are always a sad thing, and they typically don't go very well. The end of the light tunnel version of the story is that, okay, I actually had an opportunity now to flip things around and say, okay, I'm not like working for the business anymore. I'm going to redesign this thing to start working for me and allow me to live the life and lifestyle that I want to live, right? And it took a bad business breakup to kind of make me realize that, hey, instead of me being a slave to the business, I actually want to re-engineer it in such a way so that it's supporting me. So it's helping me pay my taxes. It's helping me generate a profit. It's helping me generate a lifestyle that I like. And It took me a little bit of time to figure that out. And like you said, you kind of have to have a plan and a vision of what that looks like. Mm-hmm. And then you go, how does the business fit into this? Right. And anybody that's listening, you don't do it the other way around where you're just doing a lot of stuff, doing things, hoping that things click. Ideally, you start with a vision first and figure out like, how does this vision look like? What are the specific details? How can you create it in such a way so that your business or your side hustle or the thing that you're trying to build fits into that picture and also supports you in that life as well?
Yeah, and that gives you the power and the energy and the drive to actually start doing the things that need to be changed for you to reach that. Because as I've told people before, and I'm sure you will appreciate or relate to this, you need one step in the right direction, right? It's that first step. And it may be difficult. It may feel risky. It may feel like, okay, I'm not 100%, sure that I should be doing this, but I'm taking that first step. And I literally had a podcast the other day with one of our Voltage clients, John Anderson, who was talking just like that. He's like, I'm at the edge of all these things and I'm not sure if I should do this. And I'm going to take that first step, right? And then it was like another step and another step and another step, right? And now he's seen himself to what's going to be about a $600,000 a year business by the end of this year, about 18 months into his process. But he was just like, he talks himself through the challenges and struggles of his mindset. And then almost the reciprocation and reward factor of realization that I am worth this. I am good. I'm good for this. It's good for me. I should be doing this. It's a positive outcome. And the lifestyle aspects of that have now changed. His thinking has changed. His conversation has changed from the guy that I met 16 months ago. He's got a different affect to him. And that's because he chose to go after something that would benefit his lifestyle, his family, his young children, his wife. And he stuck to the process, took the first step. And it's just a step-by-step basis. Every 3 feet, you got to look forward, look back and just say, am I making the right next move? Everybody seems to think that it's this giant leap forward. I have to take this huge, big risk, or I have to do this big, gigantic thing. So maybe I can post it on social media. I don't know what they're thinking when they do that, but it's the baby steps.
Yeah. No, I like that idea because one of the things that people talk about when it comes to productivity is, hey, you have to break stuff down into smaller chunks so that you can get started, which is generally a good idea, but it also implies that you have to know all the steps, which is not the case. especially when it comes to building something new you've never done before.
Yep.
You have to just know what the first step is. And once you complete the first step, the next step will oftentimes appear, and then you just go from there. So you don't have to know all 25 steps or 251 steps that might be required to complete what you're trying to do. However, you just need to know the first one, take action on that. And once you take action, the next step will oftentimes just appear and be right in front of you and go, okay, this is what I have to do next. So don't worry about knowing every single thing. Just get started.
So how are you helping entrepreneurs take those next steps? Because you're a step-by-step guy. I know that's how you work in your business. How are you helping them move their next steps forward?
Yeah. So when they come to me, we walk them through the T framework. So I'm trying to identify time, energy, and attention, and what's the thing that they're lacking most. And then oftentimes when we just address one of those things first, everything else starts to kind of unlock from there, right? So most of us just have one or two blockages that hold us back from trying to what we're trying to accomplish. And so if you're lacking time in your life, but you know exactly what you need to do and how you're going to do it, and you have the energy to do it, we just have to figure out a way to prioritize, because time management oftentimes is actually not about like decluttering your calendar or like old school time management techniques. It's what you said earlier. It's being able to prioritize and identify and say, hey, this is the most important thing right now. How do I prioritize this in such a way where I have to say no to certain things and then say yes to this? Because anytime you're making a decision to say, I'm going to do this, you also make trade-offs and you will say no to other things. And that's sometimes a little bit uncomfortable for people, especially as you're growing your business and you're going to be overwhelmed by opportunities and there's a lot of things in front of you where you go, okay, everything looks great. What do I actually pick? Right. And this is where you have to, and this goes back to your vision, is to say, okay, what is it that I want to build? And how does any of these opportunities align with that? Because if you don't know what the vision is, then everything looks equally important and equally exciting. But once you know what the outcome is or the vision that you want to create, some things will be in more alignment than others, right? So if you want to become a published author, and that's like your number one goal in life, your to-do list might look like, oh, well, I have to do my taxes. I have to redo my closet. I have to do some kitchen remodeling, right? I have to write a chapter of my book. Like all these things could look important, and some of them are, but there's only one thing on that to-do list that is most important, and that is writing your book, because it's most aligned to your bigger vision. And once you see what that is, then you'll be able to prioritize.
Yeah, dude, that's some great tips. So where can people reach you if they want to chat with you more about these things?
But they can go to my website. So I have asianefficiency.com. I also have a podcast called The Productivity Show. So both of those are free resources people can go to and check out. If people are interested, just subscribe to the podcast or to our email newsletter.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing some great stuff today. Hopefully you guys got some good stuff out of this. Leave some love, some likes, some comments, some subscriptions. Help us beat big tech and get this out there so more people can understand the value of the conversation we're having today. It's really big. No matter what business line you're going to choose to be involved in, you should know there's profit involved in that financially. But what you really need to figure out is how your time, energy, and attention can be most spent correctly in an area that profits you on all levels, not just finance. And I think that was the biggest takeaway I got from today. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Thanks for having me.